Thanksgiving morning, I caught an early flight to Ohio. As many of you know, Don's mom is really sick. And so I went to spend Thanksgiving Day with her and with his whole family. So as I sat in my seat, I had, on the airplane, I had my Bible and I had my Old Testament commentary on my lap, because I wanted to read over this Isaiah text again. All week, I had been turning around in my head the words, "Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." Because often when I read these things, I let the words fall on me and I think, what is it that really strikes me this week? And that was the thing that kept running around in my head. Something about it sounded so true and so enticing, and at the same time so absurd and so far off from reality. So I shut my eyes. It was an early flight. So I shut my eyes to dream and think about this idea, what it means to walk in the light. And how do we do that? Because I wasn't willing to stand up here and say to you, walk in the light, and leave it at that. Because if it was that easy, then we would all do it. Well, a bit later, I opened my eyes, and there was this young man sitting next to me. And he kind of looked at my Bible, my Old Testament commentary, and he says to me, "You reading that for fun or what?" And I thought, okay. But I said to him, I said, "Well, I'm a pastor and I've got to write my sermon for Sunday." Well, much to my surprise, this man, he wants to talk to me about this. And he says, "Well, what are you going to talk about?" And I kind of laughed because this was my problem. I didn't know what I was going to be talking about. And I said, "Well, I wish I knew something about walking with God, though, something about walking in the light." That's what Isaiah talks about. And then he says to me, he says, "That's good, because that's what I need to know." He says, I had a mentor on the base, and I've been talking to him a lot about this, about how the two parts of my life feel so separate. My work life and my spiritual life feel disconnected. And then he talked a bit about his girlfriend and he was going home to visit family in Arkansas. He talked about how he wanted to be a pilot, and he grew up Methodist, and he goes to a non-denominational. He was a talker. I know a lot about this man. But then, after all of that, he looked right at me and he says, "I really want someone to tell me how, because I'm afraid." And it caught me a little off guard, this tall, probably 29-year-old, handsome Marine. Afraid of what? Is what I asked. And he said, "Afraid of the walk." And I sort of sighed, because this is exactly what is so hard about Advent. Not as like a liturgical season, but as a reality. We don't like to walk, or we're afraid to walk in these sort of in-between times. And so we dash through Advent, and we dash through life. It's so much easier for us, and it's much more predictable, honestly. It's much easier and more predictable to pin our hopes on these holiday feasts and these Christmas gifts, all of which are really lovely, good things. But they're safe, rather than opening ourselves up to the possibility of believing in something that sounds so impossible, like peace on earth, goodwill, like the Son of Man coming. The reason, at least in my opinion, the reason the commercials, the bows, the cookies, the wreaths, the trees, all those things, the reason they're so compelling to us is not really a bad reason. It's not a bad thing. I think sometimes in the church we say, "Oh, we have to put that off. We can't do that yet." And I don't think that's true. I think that the reason those things are so compelling to us is because our human yearning for something good and true and lovely is so profound. It's so real to us. and we've already been disappointed enough. So as I stood to deplane, I reached out to shake this guy's hand, and I said, "Happy Thanksgiving." And he says, "You too." And then he said, "Thanks a lot." And I heard the words, but I didn't hear the words, you know? And so as I got off the plane, I sort of thought, for what? Like, thanks for what? But I didn't ask him, because I didn't really hear what he said to me, and I was dashing. Of course, I was dashing to go get Don, and he was going to be meeting me at the baggage claim. And I told him a little bit about this conversation about this guy who's afraid of the walk. And he said, "Well, aren't we all? And aren't we all?" We often lose our footings. So when Isaiah takes us up this mountain, this is what he does. He takes us up this mountain and he shows us exactly what our hearts long for. And in some ways, when I see that vision in the Bible, it sort of hurts. It hurts because we want it so badly. We want that promise of no more war, of peace in our homes, of all those things that the commercials promise us. And it seems like no matter how far we walk or what we go through, that Isaiah's words of peace and harmony of light and community, they still seem far off. We've been walking for a long time. And so had the Israelites, at this point when Isaiah proclaims this, so had the Israelites been walking for a long time. And he proclaims those words into the exact same things which are going on today. He proclaims those words into this sense of loss, this sense of waywardness, this total idolatry of the world. To this time, Isaiah says, "Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." Well, I still didn't have an answer to what the Marine told me he wanted somebody to tell him how. So I mentioned earlier that I had gone to Ohio to see Sandy. And she's one of those people who radiate light. Just an amazingly vibrant, peaceful, hopeful woman. For as long as I've known her, she's been committed to that walking in the light of the Lord. Well, Sandy can no longer walk. Mere movements, ones which used to take little effort, are now completely beyond her own ability. She can't move her legs. Her feet get stuck on the wheelchair wheels. And someone has to hold her on both sides so she can walk back into the bed in the wheelchair. And her balance is off. If anybody should be afraid of walking, it should be her. Because there's no more rushing. And she can't move without thinking about the effort that one step takes. And nor can anybody else in that house who's helping Sandy think about how much effort walking can take. So as I sat there in this, they live in this 135-year-old farmhouse. As I sat there and I watched Don's sister help Sandy walk from the wheelchair to the bed, I heard those words, "Come, let us walk in the light." Walking in the light is about an us. Isaiah's promise isn't just head out the door and walk. And it was sort of like my heart was screaming to my head that it's an us is what I kept hearing. And I don't know, I honestly don't know if Sandy is afraid of the walking, or if she's afraid of what lies ahead, or if she's afraid for her family. But what I do know is she can only walk right now, physically, and through all those other things that lie ahead, she can only do those because of all the us's in that room. And I know that they are her light. They are the Word beholden to her. And all the other people, there were like 16 other people in that room. They're afraid. I'm certain of it. Afraid of losing someone they love. Afraid of how their world will look differently. Afraid of choosing the right path. But they do it. And they do it in some ways because Sandy is the beholden Word unto them. The very light of God. They can only do it because they're there together. Isaiah doesn't say, you go walk in the light of the Lord. Isaiah doesn't say that. Isaiah says, first come. Come, take a step, and then we'll go together. There's this old African proverb, and it says, if we want to walk faster, then we walk alone. But if we want to walk farther, then we walk together. Together we go. Walking because our journey is long and there is much ahead of us. I often tell stories when I preach. And I thought I would tell you this morning why, because it makes sense to me this morning. Each week after I've read the lessons, I carry them around with me, like I did this week as I encounter the world. And I try to see the Word in the world. Because I believe that our lives are all sermons, all messages, the Word incarnate today. And that's what Isaiah says. The very first part, Isaiah says, behold the Word. See the Word. Don't just hear the Word, but see the Word today. Because it's all around you. My Thanksgiving Day was different this year. Different, like, internal gifts were given. But as I flew back, carrying these insights on walking with God, knowing that God had shown me something to say so that the Word could be seen, I was profoundly grateful. Not just because it was Thanksgiving, but grateful that the Word of God has come, is coming, and will come again to walk with us. And what I really wanted to do is I wanted to dash back to the airport, and I wanted to say to that young Marine, I wanted to say, you may be afraid of the walk, but you're not walking alone. And I wanted to say that walking in the light of God isn't about finding God or finding the light first. It's about taking a step. And I wanted to say, I'll walk with you. And I wanted to say that the talking we had was part of the walking. And I couldn't. So I'm saying to you, we can't make it on our own. We were never meant to. So as we navigate our ways through these days, in all our days, perhaps one of the greatest challenges we face is trying not to lose our footing. In this Advent walk, in the walk of your life, I know that God will reveal people to you for you to walk with. Because God always does.